All right, so today I'm talking about how to get started. How to get started when you want to make a change in your life. When I want to make a change in my life. It's something that I've been feeling for a while, and the way I describe that is the feeling of wanting to make a change is I feel like I'm living inside of a box. I feel like what I do at work and other aspects of my life, I feel like I'm boxed in. I feel like I'm almost suffocating in the routine and in the limitations that I feel around what I'm able to do with my time, what I'm able to experience in my routine day, and I feel dissatisfied with it from my gut out, and I just feel like I'm inside of a box, and sometimes it feels like it's a tiny box, like a shoe box, and other times it feels like it's the penalty box. But either way, I'm boxed in, and I stay there, and I live there, and I have that feeling, and sometimes it surges, and sometimes it is a prolonged awareness and discontent with that routine in my life, and at other times it just kind of subsides as I get caught up in the grind, in the routine, in the to-dos, or when things do become a little more interesting in my routines, then that feeling will subside, but it's always there. And so my question is, why is it always there? Why is it not changed? Why hasn't it gone away? Why has my box not broken open and I've allowed myself and begun to live a different life? And so the question that I have for myself is, where do you start? How do you start making a change? Do I need to go to UPW and experience Tony Robbins in face to face, or do I need to subscribe to the right podcast and just listen to that? Speaking of podcasts, I'm going to reference one in the bottom in the details of the video here. It is a Tony Robbins podcast, and what I'm trying to talk about, I recommend you go to the 9-minute 6-second timestamp on the podcast and start listening there, because I feel like for me the first step has been to figure out what are the shoulds and the wants and the desires in my life versus the have-to-haves, the must-haves, because the shoulds and the desires and the New Year's resolution type of desires and goals, those go all in the same column, and those are the things that I want and I feel like I ought to do or I should be doing in my life, and then there's the have-to-dos, the have-to-haves, the absolute, coming from way inside me, a deep longing that just won't leave me alone and is ever present and is just becoming more and more of a force in my life and pulling me and drawing me into it. And so really the big difference between these two columns or two lists or two types of desires are and the should side, that's anything that requires willpower, anything that requires a push, anything that requires consistent pushing or it's just not going to happen, versus the things that pull me in, that pull me toward them, not in, but pull me toward them, that don't require willpower, but are just a force in and of themselves within me, within my life, in my energy, that exert that force on me and draw me to them. And so those are the have to, the must to, and those are associated with my standard, and those are associated with, or they really are, my story of who I am, my identity. And so there are some exercises that you can do and that I've started doing to help me identify what's in one column, what's in the other column, because the key, or a main key, is to move those things from the should column or the want column or area into the must. There's a way to do that, and a way to keep them in the must, the have to. And when that happens, those come about. That's the thing with the must. If it's a must, if it's a have to, then it happens in your life. And here's an example, or a few examples. A must to or a must have to is anything that, well, here's an example. For example, I can say, or I ask myself, what is it that I have to do? Or what are my standards? Or who am I? What do I do? And financially, for example, I say, I can identify, I pay my bills on time. I don't incur consumer credit card debt. I am wise with my paycheck. I pay 10% of my income to charity. Those are some things that I do financially, and those are have tos. Those are musts in my life, and I always do them. The things in my should column, for instance, when it comes to finances or financial matters, I ought to learn about investing. I ought to, or I should, or I want to know how to invest money. I want to know how to grow money. I want to know how to start with $1 and turn it into $2, and to do that consistently. And I want to practice that. I want to have enough money in my life coming in that I don't worry about, or I don't feel like I'm limited on the amount that can come into my life. And I want to be able to spend money when it's time to spend money without clinging on to it. So those are things that I want and that I try to practice, and they're things, some of them that I feel are so important, and I want them to become a reality, a must, my identity. So the question is, how do I do that? And what I'm doing right now, what I recommend, my son came to me last night and he said, "Hey Dad, I've been thinking," and he's 16 now. He says, "I've been thinking," and he's got a job at Taco Bell. This summer he worked as a lifeguard. Neither of those jobs have been particularly fulfilling for him, unsurprising. But he's thinking about how he's spending his time, the return on his investment, what he's learning in the experience, and he's experiencing that kind of work, and it's got him thinking, and he doesn't know if he wants to keep doing that kind of routine for the rest of his life. So he comes to me and he says, "Dad, I'm thinking about making money, and I want to make a change. I want to be able to make $1 million by the time I'm 18." And he says, "Do you think I can do that?" And I look at him and I say, "You know what? It's not that I feel like I can't tell you, yeah, I think you can do that." I said, I think you're asking me the wrong question. And I don't think that it matters if I think you can do that. If you don't know that you can do that, or if you're not in a place where that's part of your life, that's your, and then I went on to explain to him, look, what you got to do is you got to sit down and you got to take stock of what are your shoulds and what are your musts, have tos. And I explained to him the difference between the two. And I said, you go sit down and you write a list you take a paper, draw a line down the middle on the left-hand side. You write should, must, or should, need to, ought to, want to, and then on the right-hand side, must, have to. And remember that on the left-hand side, those are the things that require willpower. That they may be super important in your life, but you realize that you have to push and push and push for them to happen. And the ones on the right are the ones that happen naturally. Those are the ones that pull you and draw you in. Those are the ones that get you waking up out of bed at 4 a.m. on a regular basis because you want to go do them, or because they're so powerful. They're gonna drag you out of bed that early on a regular basis. And so that's the starting point. Take the paper, draw the line down the middle, left hand, right hand, left hand should, right hand must, and just let it flow, and take your notes and write it down, and then reflect on it. And step number 2 is to ask this question: for those things on the left that I want to have on the right, when did I decide? When did I learn? When did I begin to believe? And how did I begin to believe that those are my limitations? In other words, or for example, take my example of, I want to know how to invest, and I want to begin to invest, and I want to know how to consistently turn $1 into $2. So why don't I do that right now in my life? Why isn't that a pattern in my life right now? And when and how did I get stuck in having that be something that I want and that I don't do? And that happened sometime probably in my childhood. Just the way that I went about thinking, what I was exposed to as a child, as far as philosophy and feeling and energy around money and spending money and saving money and the lack of money, and so what you have to do with money. So where did they start? And that's step number 2, is to find those limitations around whatever it is on the left-hand side. And another thing that is helpful is to look at the things on the right-hand side and examine and ask, how did those get to be there? Why is it that I am absolutely sure that I'm always going to pay 10% of my income to charity and make a charitable donation? No matter how little I've made in my life, I've always done that. As a newlywed, it was just tight all the time, never having money, and to do what we needed. I mean, it was a fling for us to spend $20 on a date night. That was a big deal, and yet we both felt it was a must, a have to donate 10% of whatever income we had as students and newlyweds, because we both got married when we were in college, and I had a kid when we were in college. But anyway, we that was a must for us. So why was it a must? What brought us to that point, and what did that do for us? Because that will reveal, I mean, maybe there were limitations that had to be overcome for that to stay in the must column, and to know that and to see that and to recognize that can be helpful, and it can be essential, it can be critical to moving whatever it is that is in the left-hand side, the should column, into the must column. So that's what I told my son, and that's what I've been doing with myself. That's what I'm going to do right now when I go into work. So yeah, it's 5 a.m. Just arrived at work. It was a nice chat during my commute, and anyway, check down in the link below to that Tony Robbins podcast. Of all the people I've listened to, Tony Robbins is the one that is the real deal. He's the real deal, and he's a people lover. He loves people, and that's his motivation. And that's along with his ability to get right to the truth and to speak the truth in any situation, and to do so with full love for people. I feel that energy from him so strongly anytime I listen to him. Never met him, never been in his presence, but I feel it, and he's the real deal. So, having a coach is helpful, and everybody can. I've told people who come to me for counseling and for advice in an ecclesiastical role. I've told them in many cases, I feel like anybody's going to profit from counseling, from seeing and talking to a counselor, like a therapist. You find the right therapist and get the right relationship with them. Those conversations that you have and the commitment that you make and the follow-through that you have with that relationship is going to change you. It's going to open your mind up, and it's going to help you see the world and your life in a new way, and it's going to make you act differently and believe differently, and it's going to change your story. It's not going to heal everything, it's not going to solve everything, but the right therapist and the commitment and the follow-through is going to do that for you. So it's the same thing with coaching. Life coaching, business coaching, any kind of sports coaching. If you want to accomplish something, if you want to learn to play the guitar, the best way to learn to play the guitar is to have a coach, have a mentor. So it's anything of that nature, a personal trainer, anything that you want to change in your life. If you have someone who's walked the path and who's committed to you, and who you can begin to trust, you're going to do much more quickly. And that's a component, that's a fact. And so, to have a coach is important, and not everybody can have Tony Robbins as a coach. And yet people need a coach. And so it's a legitimate thing to go find someone who understands the same things that Tony Robbins or Tim Ferriss or Carol Tuttle, or I don't know why I'm struggling to find names right now, because everyone in the world right now is becoming a coach and making their wealth off of coaching. But you find your coach. Not everyone can be coached by the big names, and so it's a legitimate thing to go find a coach, or to become a coach, because you're helping people, and it's a real thing, and it changes their life for the better. So signing off here from Flags FLGS. That's full life. Grow spiritually.